Greetings all, Ferrariman601 here. Mere hours before I began producing this video, MSF Italian modding team have released this, the 2002 Williams FW24 for Assetto Corsa. MSF are a very small modding outfit. I believe they only have 3 or 4 people working with them based out of Italy, as their name suggests. They don't even have an official website from the best I can find. However, I will do my best to link to them and to this car over on Race Department, free for the taking, in the video description. However, they had made in the past, about a year ago now, an FW23 mod for Assetto Corsa, which was very good, if not a little rough around the edges. However, unfortunately, due to the changes in the sound architecture, particularly in the external sound architecture from Kunos in the intervening time, that mod has now become pretty much incompatible with the latest builds of Assetto Corsa. However, MSF have made good on that previous experience and have given us the FW24. The FW24 is an interesting subject for a mod. First of all, it's a Formula 1 car. Second of all, it's a V10 Formula 1 car. And third of all, it's a race-winning Formula 1 car. In 2002, Williams did not have the best season in their very illustrious Grand Prix racing history, it must be said. Of course, Williams winning multiple world championships over their years in Formula 1. However, they really haven't been near the sharp end of the grid in pretty much the last 15 years now. That's a little sobering to say, to be quite honest. However, that's the lay of the land for Williams. In 2002, the FW24, out of the 17 races it contested, took 7 pole positions, took 3 fastest laps, and did take, courtesy of Ralf Schumacher, a single race victory at the 2002 Malaysian Grand Prix. However, that's about where the history of the car stops. It's not particularly illustrious. However, one very distinctive characteristic of Williams during this era was their partnership with BMW, the legendary German auto manufacturer. BMW supplied the engines for Williams from 2000 all the way up to 2005, at the end of which they signed a deal with Cosworth for V8 engines, the new formula for 2006. However, that BMW engine in the back of the Williams was regarded very widely as among the most, if not the most, powerful engine in Formula 1 of the era. The V10 engine in this carbon fiber monocoque car, carbon galore on this thing, as you would expect from a car of this era. The BMW Type P81, normally aspirated 3-liter V10 engine, cylinders opposed at 90 degrees. Quintessentially the V10 engine of the V10 Formula 1 era, of course extending basically from 1993-ish all the way up to 2005. Of course, before 1996, there were multiple engine configurations running concurrently on the grid, but by 1996, all the teams but one, I'm talking about 40, ran a V10 engine of some sort. Maybe throw Tyrrell in that mix as well in 1997. I'm not quite sure. But Williams, of course, with that BMW V10, for which they were quite well known, as it was very powerful. In fact, it was so powerful that at the time, I believe Juan Pablo Montoya was able to set, at that point, the fastest lap ever recorded in Formula 1 in terms of average speed, averaging about 161.5 miles per hour, or just under 260 kilometers per hour, around the 3.6-mile course at Monza. So, lots of power from this engine, and of course it made a glorious noise whilst generating all of that potential. As we mentioned in the race history, not so much in terms of notoriety for the FW24, but because of the sound it made, the power it made, and the 2 great drivers in Juan Pablo Montoya and Ralf Schumacher, this car, I think, is a worthy subject for an Assetto Corsa mod. And from a small modding outfit to be able to put something out like this, it's no mean feat at all. MSF over on their Facebook page often talk about their ongoing projects, all of which are in various stages of gestation at this point, considering they are a very small outfit and have very few staff. But they are plugging away, and this is direct evidence of that. What have MSF been able to give us here in the FW24, though? I'm always hesitant when I'm reviewing these mods to criticize anybody, because, quite honestly, I don't have this sort of ability. I don't have the education, I don't have the technical skills. I'm merely a consumer of this content, and I endeavor through these reviews to give you my impressions of them in as objective and as informed a manner as possible. However, I do not have the know-how to be able to produce something like this. So anything that I say here that does sound a little bit critical, I mean it in truly the nicest of terms and truly in the most objective of terms that I can muster, simply because I do know a lot about Formula One. I'm very familiar with all of the cars that I review from the real world and studying their history and watching the races in which they participated. So any observations I do make here, please, I do give them in good faith, and I'm only trying to give you some reasonable, hopefully helpful feedback here. However, looking here on the FW24, first of all, we can see a car that looks very nicely put together in a macrocosmic sense. The car sits right on the ground, the proportions look good, the dimensions look good, the paint finish, the livery, everything looks absolutely correct there in terms of its placement, its color, and the general reflectivity of everything. So good job there on the livery, and good job there on the proportions and overall plan and layout of the car. It looks absolutely brilliant here. However, when we come in close a little bit here, and we'll stop the rotation so we can get a better view here, you will notice that there is a little bit of pixelation with some of the sponsorship graphics, a little bit with where the paint transitions between colors as well. Compared to some mods by ASR or VRC, for example, it is a little bit rough. However, when you consider the very small outfit and relatively inexperienced outfit producing this car, this is by no means bad. So I do not want to give you that impression. However, you will notice that it's not an ASR product. It's not a VRC product. However, it is free for us, and it is a V10 Formula One car. So do bear that in mind if your first impression is just a little bit on the negative side. Looking here around the shapes of the front wing, this is of the era. Remember, we're talking about 2002, so we don't have these big multi-element front wings with these bridge flyover flying buttress sections around the flaps to give a little bit more downforce, positive pressure on the front end. None of that, just a main plane and then an upper flap, which is generating all that downforce there with the FedEx branding I'm talking about. The HP branding down there is effectively a neutral section, just with a little bit of a downward slope to it, where it marries up with the pylons. We called that the spoon section. It was a loophole in the regulations that the designers exploited to get the wing a little bit closer to the pavement for more efficiency. Moving around the nose section here, we mentioned those pylons. You can see Williams, their mounting solution here for the wing, very simple, actually harkens back to the early 90s in terms of that mounting design. As you want the nose of the car to be as high as possible to channel as much air underneath the center section of the car as you can, that is why you've got these long protruding pylons there mounting to the wing. Looking inside those pylons, you do see the discrete tribute that Williams have run on all of their Formula One cars since 1994. The Senna S there, of course. Senna, we lost him while he was driving a Williams, and the Williams team, of course, to this day, carry that sentiment with them. And on every Williams car produced since 1994, somewhere on the car is a discrete little tribute there to Ayrton Senna. Very nice detail there by MSF to include that here. Looking around the front end of the car here, you can see the suspension design on the front end, double wishbone push rod as is expected from this era. You can see the wishbones there, the lower wishbones mounting to that keel, a single keel design there, going down the center of the car. It's that protruding section that dips down from the bottom of the nose there. That is just to keep the angles of those lower wishbones at 180 degrees relative to the bottom of the chassis and at 90 degrees relative to where the wheel comes in. The carbon components still kind of in their adolescence at this point. McLaren, of course, introducing carbon all the way back in 1981, but as technology continued to advance, particularly once the computer age came upon us, the manner in which carbon components could be designed and manufactured changed radically. However, they still couldn't quite get the geometries such so that they could mount the suspension directly to the chassis, hence the need for that keel solution there. Of course, you can also see the push rods coming up there at, I would say, maybe about 60 degrees from the lower wishbone up into the chassis there in those pickup points on the tub. Very, very cool. Looking toward the midsection, we can see the midsection aero treatment that Williams were using in this era. Note pretty much the absence of barge boards. We have these little protrusions that are coming out from the side of the chassis there underneath the radiator inlets there, right where the banner has just come up. That'll go away in a moment. There we go. That's what I'm talking about there. Just arrears of the Castrol logo and just in front of the HP Invent logo there on the side pod, that little protrusion. Underneath the suspension, you can see these small forward barge boards there. However, we don't have a traditional barge board placement on this car, and this is a design philosophy that I can remember on Williams cars going at least all the way up to 2005 on the FW27. That car also did not have a traditional large barge board like Ferrari, for example, used to run in this area. Looking toward the cockpit there, we'll go in the cockpit in just a little bit, but you can see the detail going on there. Williams BMW on the steering wheel. In addition, you can see the geometries here as we run arrears on the car around the side pods. You can see a large section of bodywork exposed here. That is an exhaust area for the hot air from the radiators to go out, and then it interfaces with this swooping section coming up from the side of the side pod and then up over the rear wheel just to control that turbulence induced by the airflow over the rear wheels. Speaking of the rear wheels, here they are. You can see the texturing here on the groove tires of the era, the Michelins, of course. Very nicely done. And then moving arrears, you can see the diffuser. Rather complex, I would say, diffuser design in this era. It's not as complicated as the one you would see, for example, on the Ferrari F2002, and certainly not as complicated as the one on the F2004. However, you can definitely see Williams definitely being quite aggressive here with their diffuser. Additionally, we can see the rear suspension double wishbone push rod again on the rear, as was ubiquitous in this era, in addition to the prop shafts or the half shafts you can see coming out from the differential at the back of the gearbox going into the rear wheels, providing that torque, of course, through the gearbox generated by that engine. Very cool. Speaking of the gearbox, it is a 7-speed semi-automatic paddle shift sequential. Again, ubiquitous pretty much through this era. I believe Minardi were the only team that did not run a 6-speed gearbox in 2002. Renault, Benetton, Renault, I know they changed their name to Renault for 2002. A lot of people still called them Benetton, however, because they were Benetton for all intents and purposes. They may also have run a 6-speed gearbox in 2002. I'm not quite sure on that. Looking a little bit closer here on the rear, you can see, maybe we can pull out slightly, you can see the exhaust outlets here, and they're recessed quite severely into the bodywork. I am not 100% sure if that's how Williams had this packaged. I'm just looking through the slot gap there on the rear wing at the exhaust outlets. I'm not entirely sure if this is actually the configuration Williams were running. It is quite possible that it was, or if this is a little bit of MSF work going on, but you can see the effect of having those exhausts recessed is that central section of bodywork slopes down toward the rain light and the beam wing of the rear wing. And if you remember back to about 2012 in Formula One, we talked about the Quanda effect, in which a high-pressure fluid flow, in this case exhaust gas and air, attaches itself to adjacent surfaces. It looks like Williams are doing something like that here with their exhaust outlets. Of course, all topside exhaust in this era. However, you can see those wraps, and I could just see, given the heat treatment on this bodywork, that exhaust attaching itself to that wrap and then blowing that beam wing and giving a little bit extra downforce, particularly at high throttle opening. I wouldn't say that was their primary objective here, but it certainly looks like a good side effect, I must say. Around the side of the car in shadow, you can see those very nice reflections. Seems like all the modding teams out there for Assetto Corsa are going for highly reflective bodywork nowadays. Love it or hate it, I tend to like it very much, and I do think it just adds a little bit of pizzazz to the car. Other details here, cockpit time. Let's fly in here very slowly, and here we are. In contrast to some other mods that we've seen lately, particularly Formula One mods, not too much detail going on in here. In the early 2000s, these Formula One teams basically treated their cars as if they were royalty, who didn't want to be seen for the most part. So hermit kings, if you will. So finding high-resolution pictures of the inside of an early 2000s Formula One car is very difficult even to this day, particularly Williams, who don't sell their cars to outside clients really, and they maintain every car that they have ever produced and has survived to this day. They maintain it in their museum, where they have a whole staff of mechanics whose only job it is to look after the Formula One cars of yesteryear. Williams have a very cool museum in, I believe, Grove in the UK, where they exhibit some of these cars, but for the most part, they're in storage, and I believe they try to run them up once a month, as feasible as that may be. At this point, Williams likely have over 100 cars that they've produced over the years. However, very difficult to find good pictures of the insides of these cockpits, so I'll give MSF a pass on that. However, it doesn't matter that much because you don't really look down in the cockpit when you're driving the car anyway. In terms of the eye point in here, it's high, so don't really get too comfortable with the sight lines here. That'll change momentarily when we get out on track, but you can see the detail going on with the steering wheel. Everything that's labeled on the steering wheel is nicely legible, and I do have to say, from pictures I've seen of Williams steering wheels of the era, that looks very authentic. Shift lights, of course, across the top. The two display windows in there, this car does not give you a whole lot of information, I must say. You've got a gear display, and then you've got speed and lap time, and that's the only thing it's going to show you. There's no fuel indicator, there are no flag lights, no marshalling lights, no nothing, so very bare bones in terms of your instrumentation. Looking around the cockpit here, the detail that we do have is pretty good. We've got the seat, obviously, we've got the weave of the carbon around the sides of the bulkhead, the Williams chassis plate, and the seat belts replete with the weave of the fabric. So very nice details there, the few that are here. Looking around the cockpit surround, you can see the padding, and then across the back, the BMW logo. A little bit pixelated, I must say. However, that's just an observation. I don't know how to put a logo on a 3D model, so it is what it is, and again, that's something you don't see when you drive anyway. Looking up here, you can see the air snorkel and the T-bar where the camera would be mounted. Notice no camera lens in this one. We can assume that Williams are running a camera blank here, as they often did in this era. Not every car carried onboard cameras in 2002, unlike today where every car is fitted with multiple cameras, including a high-speed one for documenting driver head movement in the event of an accident. However, 2002, not the case. Leaving the cockpit here. And I do very much like those flyover effects as you go in and out of the cockpit. Just gives you a sense to have a look at the proportions of the car again from a slightly different and dynamic angle. Very cool. Just notice a little detail here along the top of the chassis there, the shut lines around that hatchwork where the driver's feet would be, the pedal box, the footwell, also probably access to the brake system, maybe the master cylinder. However, most of the time you'll see the mechanics adding or removing brake fluid from behind the nose. They'll take the nose section off, and then you see the brake fluid reservoirs, usually one for the front and one for the rear, two canisters there carrying brake fluid. But very nice touch there to put that hatch in there and, of course, show us the shut line with that. Also looking around the front, you can see the radiators in there. They have bothered to model those. Very cool. I must say that some work by some other modding teams, other small modding teams, they don't include details like radiators. So good job, MSF. You've not overlooked that detail. Although it may be a minor one, it does add to that sense of authenticity. So all in all, that's your exterior view of the FW24. It is a little bit rough around the edges, I must say, but considering the limited resources that MSF have, it's certainly a very fair effort, I will say. Good job, gentlemen. The only thing that remains, however, is, of course, to drive this car. To do that, we're going to take it to Catalunya, the old configuration of Catalunya, where the Spanish Grand Prix was and, of course, still is held. However, minus the chicane and with that nice, long, flowing corner entering Sector 3. We will be there momentarily.
Welcome to Catalunya. Before we get out on track, of course, we're going to have a look through the setup screens and see what's what. And I genuinely do mean what's what. I have not done any running at all in this car before this take right here. The only running I've done were 2 straight line runs that I do before every review just to make sure that I get the audio balance right between the voiceover and the in-game sound. Other than that, I have no idea what this car is going to do. The only thing I learned about it was what the display on the steering wheel shows you. That's it. So together, let's have a look at the setup screen. Here on the gear display, it looks like we've got our gears 1st through 7th, and it does appear that we can play with the final drive ratio plus the individual gear ratios to our heart's content. You can see the default values here. Tires. Medium compound is the default. We have hard at the extreme right, and we have soft at the extreme left. We'll stay on the mediums for this run, I'm going to say. Pressures default to 9 psi. They go down to 6, and they go up to 24. So that's a very wide range you've got to play with your tire pressures. We'll have to see where the ideal is. Fuel, we've shut the engine down here for the moment, but it defaults to 50 liters, and it goes all the way up, if you want, to 150 liters. Remember, refueling was allowed in this era, so do plan accordingly. Electronics, traction control. Default is 1, which would be the most assist. Goes all the way up to 6, which would be the least assist with the system still active. And you can turn it off as well if you would be crazy enough to try that. These cars, of course, were designed to run with traction control, so I'm going to run traction control, a lot of traction control, to begin with anyway. Aero, front and rear wings, you can see the default values here, 15 degrees on the front and 35 degrees on the rear. As we change our flap angles here, you do not see those flap angles change visually, however the effects are modeled in the sim. We'll run default values. Alignment, camber on toe on all 4 corners there. Dampers, the bump, fast bump, rebound, fast rebound, all 4 corners. Drivetrain, differential in power, coast, and preload, 25% power, 45% coast, and 20 newton meters torque there on the preload. These are your default values. Generic engine limiter, which would be the rev limiter, defaults to 100, goes down to 95, does not go above 100, and then of course brake bias and brake power. Suspension, anti-roll bars front and rear, in addition to wheel rates and ride heights. Advanced suspension settings, your bump stop rates, and your travel ranges on all 4 corners. And that's about all that's going on here with the FW24 setup. So we're not going to touch any of this. And in fact, we're going to go out with 50 liters of fuel. So 100% default setup here for our test, or shakedown, as this really is. Alright, so here we are in the cockpit. You can see everything is now alive. The 2 windows there giving us the only information that we're going to have. We have our gear in that lower, or that smaller window rather, neutral right now. We go up through the box, shows all your gears 1st through 7th in addition to reverse. The larger window there will have a speed readout miles per hour, the large digit there reading 0 right now, in addition to our current lap time ticking away there, just showing 3:55 right now. Additionally, for our purposes, pedal overlay in the lower left as always. And now, without further ado, let's go out into some unknown territory here in the MSF Williams FW24. Let's just be sensible here because I honestly have no idea what the car is going to do. So let's just try and get a semblance of heat into the tires and brakes and figure out what's going to happen. I genuinely do not know. Alright, well the first thing I can divine, the gearbox is very sharp and very quick. There's an auto blip on the downshift and there's an auto cut on the upshift, just as you would expect. No stabbing at the throttle or anything like that necessary. Yes, very quick downshifts. I like that. Let's just try full throttle here, deep in 7th gear. Alright, there's quite a bit of torque there. I've just got to remember that there's no chicane in the third sector, as it should be here at Catalunya. Let's confirm some settings here for traction control. 1 of 6. Brake bias is at 54 to the front. No KERS or DRS to worry about. Starting deep in 7th gear, there's that BMW engine power. And how the brakes feel at 100 meters. Solid! Brakes feel solid, okay. There's some confidence there in the braking zones. How's our front end through here? Understeer, understeer, lots of understeer, as I would expect. Some of that may be tire temperature, some of that may be the grooved tires. We'll have to see if we can differentiate that as we continue to build some temperature here. Still being a bit tentative in the traction zones. I don't quite understand what I've got underneath me yet. There's full revs. And that's some good XL and decel, I must say. There we go. Still don't know really what I've got aero-wise. We're going to be cautious here for the first couple of laps, that's for sure. That's the traction control. Oh yeah, lots of traction control there. Hear that little trill from the engine as we rev up. That's the traction control cutting the spark just as it should. What we got here through these high-speed corners. Understeer, yes. However, that power out of the corners is something. There's a lot of it. Understeer on turn in there, had to back out of the throttle. Back end a little squirrely. Turn 3. Yeah, that's of the era. Get back on the power about midway through that corner. That's convincing. Lots of traction control again in the traction zone. Into turn 4, turn 5. All right, getting some confidence now. That's understeer. Yes, it's a little oversteer. Traction control helping. Exit curbs. Nice. Handles the exit curbs nicely, provided that they're flat, as far as I can tell. Second gear, all that traction control helping out a lot. Traction control seems to be the operative word here. Getting on the power early? Yeah, nice, nice. Okay, this thing's gonna be there for me, I think. Okay. 121.971. Can do that. Can definitely do that. Add some understeer. All right. I'm starting to get my head around this thing now. You see the confidence is building already. Braking later and later, getting on the throttle earlier. That was very squirrely, but the car stayed in a straight line somehow. For the moment, because it's my first run-in and I'm thinking a few corners ahead of where I actually am, and I'm not really focusing on where the car is at the present moment. I'm just trying to plan from what I've learned about it so far, how I need to approach what's coming. I know that I've got good traction out of the corners. I know that I'm liable to get some either understeer or some neutral oversteer, as we just had there, as I go into the corner, so gotta have all of that in mind here. Lap time 121.137, so we are dropping a little bit. 191, 192 into the braking zone. Third gear, that was some oversteer into the corner. Grab fourth early. Get on the power very, very early and very, very hard. That's good. Downshifts as quick as you like. I will give it that. Lots of traction control assistance there. most obvious thing that I haven't mentioned yet, the sounds. These sounds were on the FW23 mod that MSF put out about a year ago, and they were very good, and I'm very happy to say that they're still here. Very nice. Of course, the engine's essentially identical between those two cars, only a year separating them, so very nice and very appropriate. This corner always notorious because it's slightly off camber and it's taken very fast. Alright, so we're running within a tenth now. Already consistent. That's good. That's very, very good. That oversteer again just hurts the turn in just a little bit into one. Either brake slightly earlier or maybe turn in a little bit more gently. We'll have to see. The brakes are very confidence-inducing. They're very good. They grab right away. You haven't seen me lock up yet. Yet you do get understeer after your initial turn-in. That's slightly frustrating. I would say that's down to the groove tires at this point because everything's well up to temperature. Traction is great. Love that traction. That was some oversteer. And that's not really unheard of for cars of this era either. A lot of the onboards, particularly from some of the midfield runners, lots of mid-corner oversteer that the drivers just turn into a four-wheel drift. So that's pretty authentic, I must say. Again, those groove tires allow you to do that. You'd hardly ever see that on slicks. Although Valtteri Bottas managed to do something like that in Spanish Grand Prix qualifying. It's very cool to see that Mercedes coming out of the chicane sideways. Back end tends to snap free a little bit towards the end of the braking zone, just as you're coming off of the pedal. Weight transfer, perhaps. And that understeer, turning to oversteer as you try to change direction. But great traction and great power. What else have we got going on? That's good. I mean, I had so much steering lock dialed in there in third gear and then able to get on the power very quickly. You're not going to upset this thing under acceleration. I think we can deduce that. Braking later. There's the apex I was looking for. Not a prayer of taking this flat. That's just not going to happen. 2017, you gotta be in to take that flat. Some oversteer, followed by some understeer, followed by some oversteer again. Lots of sawing at the wheel so far in this thing. Tires almost feel like they might be going through a graining phase. They feel slightly inconsistent corner to corner. Maybe. Only running 9 PSI, remember. Lots of oversteer there. I'm sure all of this looks pretty dramatic from the outside. See, any other quirks or gremlins that I can come up with at the moment? Maybe the shift lights at high revs. It almost looks like there's space for another shift light right at the extreme right of the row of lights across the top of the steering wheel. However, I can't get it lit. I don't know if there's one there or not, but the engine plateaus in its torque delivery as you hit that first red light, and that's when you pull the next gear. So if there is another shift light there, you can ignore it. Can I get them all lit up? Yes. There are 2 red lights there. However, the first one is where you want to shift because you stop accelerating the moment it illuminates. The car definitely wants you to commit to putting the power on. That I will say. And you know who it reminds me of, and it's no surprise, Juan Pablo Montoya. 100%. He just took a car and he wrung its neck and then pulled something tremendous out of it. You have to drive this car like you're Juan Pablo Montoya. Very irreverent. Take no prisoners. Just stomp your authority all over it because it does like it. It wants to be dominated. We dominated into turn 4. Yes, yes we can. Here's the thing, it doesn't want to kill you. It's actually pretty stable despite all the slides that you're seeing. They're not that difficult to recover from. In fact, they're almost easy to recover from. However, you almost have to dare the car almost to come at you. Come at me, bro. You know, it feels like that. It feels like this car is just tempting you to try and figure out when it's going to bite because you think it's going to and then it just doesn't. Like in the F2002, for example, I shouldn't be able to do this. Whole bunch of lock in 3rd gear in the power band, just stomp on the gas. In the F2002, I would be pirouetting all over the place. Not here, not at all. At least not with this traction control setting. Turn the traction control off, it's probably a very different story. For the sake of it, let's turn off the TC and see what happens. TC is off. Very cool. Very, very cool. I know it's going to bite me, but when? Something tells me into here. Yes! Did I call that or did I call that? I know myself, don't I? But that's what it takes to spin it. You have to turn the traction control off. My mood has very suddenly shifted from one of slight trepidation to one of sheer enjoyment. This is great. This is absolutely great. It's a 2002 Formula One car. We've got about 850 horsepower coming out of this 3-liter V10. It should be the scariest thing in the world, but it's fun. It's a lot of fun. We mentioned in showroom view, there are some graphical shortcomings to it, yes. Things could be a little bit sharper on the sponsorship side in terms of the graphics. Could be a little bit sharper with the wings, the way that they interface with each other between the main plane and the end plate. Sure, that could look better, but this is a Formula One car, and it wants me to drive it like a hooligan. So I will oblige and drive it like an absolute hooligan. It's great. It's absolutely great. This thing is maybe a diamond in the rough, I must say. MSF. Maybe it's not the flashiest car in the world. Maybe it's not the most well-known. But these physics, they're great. They're absolutely extraordinary. I should not be able to drive a 2002 Formula One car with the traction control turned off and stab at the gas mid-corner in third gear and hang on to it. That just shouldn't be. Yet there it absolutely is. It's great. It's absolutely tremendous. And we're running out of fuel. That's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. If any of you are turned off by this mod for any reason, for the slight graphical issues that there are, or because MSF is not well known in the modding community quite yet, just let those biases go and give this thing a try. It's free. It's over on Race Department. There are absolutely no strings attached whatsoever. They're not asking for a donation in exchange for the car or anything like that, although you can donate to these guys, and I do encourage you to do so because, I mean, come on, look at it. Listen to me. I'm having so much fun right now. It should be illegal. But just, it's great. It's absolutely wonderful. I don't want to stop. I know I've got to stop for fuel. We'll throw the soft tires on it and turn the traction control back on and be a little bit more sensible. But it's great. It's just wonderful. I love this thing. I don't know why. Honestly, it should be something that I consider to be, honestly, a little bit subpar, but it's not. It's really not. This is a diamond in the rough. That's it. That's the title of the video. All done. Hey, yes. Reminding me who's in charge. Four-wheel drift, yes! Drifting! A 2002 Formula One car. It shouldn't happen. It just shouldn't, but it just did, and it was wonderful. All right. In the pits here, let's turn the TC back on. Let's add some gas, because we need some gas. Look at that. There's your fuel consumption for you. 10 laps, 35 liters, at least around Catalunya. Put that in the memory bank. All right. Tire change, quick as you like. Very nice. Dump the clutch. Off we go. Traction control is on. On the soft tires now. TC is on. We're going to be sensible and see what we can do. Again, default setup, except for the soft tires now and less than 50 liters of fuel. I think it was, we added 35, so we probably had about maybe 6 or 7 left. I don't know, because there's no fuel level indicator. But I don't care. I just don't care. I don't care that I can't see how much gas I've got left. I don't care that it's, I don't know, maybe that windscreen looks a little weird. I just don't care. I don't care at all. All right. Let's go. Soft tires, flying laps. on it. Well, it's still trying to kill me in the braking zone. No problem. Come on. I'm the boss here. Take the Formula Hybrid line through 3. And it does it. It absolutely does it. It's great. Remember, I've got the traction control on. Don't have to be quite as careful on the gas. Who am I kidding? I don't have to be careful at all. 6. Yes. Lots of understeer, as you might expect. Again, 2002 aero. It's very wide. Make up for it with tons of power. .118.911. Awesome. Awesome. That was, let's see, best time was a 1:21. 2019, 18. 3 seconds. Soft tires are worth 3 seconds over the mediums. Oh, it's glorious. It's so glorious. I honestly do not want to stop, but I'm going to have to stop at some point because, well, I've got to record the hot laps yet, and then, of course, I've got to edit and upload this thing. Otherwise, I'm talking to myself for no good reason. But it's just great. It's so great. It's so raw, and it's so wrong in so many ways, but it's just awesome. If I had to give this car a personality, let's see, how would I characterize it? How could I personify this? Personification for any English majors who might be watching this. I would characterize this car as the girl with whom I had a very brief but very passionate fling, who I never told my mom about. That is who this car is. It's so great, but it's so not somebody you want to be associated with. That's this car, 100%. And that's oversteer, and we're not recovering from that one. So just like my impassioned fling, it ended in disaster, and that ended in disaster as well. But who am I kidding? I would go back if I could. And we're gonna go back right now. Traction control off. One last sloppy love affair with the slides, shall we? Soft tires have a little bit more severe of a slip angle than the mediums. But it doesn't matter because you can make big clouds of smoke as you recover. There you go, hold that apex. great. It's just so great in every way that matters. You can overlook everything else. Please overlook everything else if you're interested in this car and if you're still watching this at this point, because honestly, the fact that I'm still running is just self-indulgence. It's that good. It's really that good. The driving experience is something else. Light up the rears. Row it in. Use the curbs as your last lifeline. I was completely not expecting this. The confidence built straight away, and then it just started to egg me on, and here we are, we're still going. It's so great. Yeah, held it that time. It's just awesome. Pit lane with us before we get too carried away. Whew. Yes, yes, yes. Housekeeping. Make sure our settings are correct and all of that good stuff. Oh, yes. Well, that's the MSF FW24. It's obscene. It's absolutely obscene. I went into this thinking that we were going to have a tentative little shakedown run. I was going to find all kinds of problems with the default setup, and we were going to spend this entire review just trying to make the car do a single lap, but no, far from it. I want to do more laps. I want to drive it all night and all day and all week and all year and all of that crazy stuff, but that would be ridiculous because I have a life after all. But it's just it's everything you would expect a Formula 1 car to be when you're dreaming and you're 9 years old. That's exactly what it is. Is it realistic? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. It doesn't feel all that much like the F2002, for example, which would be a direct comparison, although by a completely different mod or not at all affiliated with MSF. But it's just a lot of fun. I mean, you can look at it, sure, it doesn't look as highly polished as something by ASR or VRC, but you don't care about that, as I hopefully just demonstrated to all of you, because it's just so much fun to drive. And I get to drive it again very shortly because I've got to record the hot laps, which are coming up, by the way. So if you are still watching, keep watching for a little bit longer because you're going to see what this thing does on low tanks, on soft tires, with the traction control on, of course, because we are going for lap time. That's the point of a hot lap. Yes, back to earth now, but you get the idea. So hot laps to come, external views as well as onboard, so you can hear those wonderful external sounds that are now back for all of us to enjoy. So stay tuned for the hot laps. However, from the commentary side, we're going to sign off right now. Thank you all very, very much for watching and for all of your continued support. So far, this month has been very, very good for the channel, I must say. If you are a new subscriber, welcome. I hope you like what you see. And if you've been here for a while, you're a stalwart follower, thank you very much for sticking around. I do very much appreciate it. However, stay tuned for the hot laps, everyone. And until next time, FerrariMan601 saying thank you very much, and we will see you soon.